Nico, you played against him last year when he was at Tennessee. Are you able to take anything away from that, or is it a new evaluation when he's on a new team?
Well, we evaluate everything, but I can tell you that he's a tough player. He played tough in the playoff game here, and I'm watching him play the last few weeks, and man, he's physical. He runs hard. He takes some shots, and he keeps coming back. And he's a competitor, man. I got a lot of respect for him as a player. He throws, he's got a strong arm, and he's been doing a lot for his team. And you watch him on the field, he's a warrior. So we'll take all that into consideration, just and look at everything. But we know this is a great challenge for our team, and it starts with him.
Ryan, lots of things happening on the recruiting side of things. It seems like maybe there's been a change of philosophy as far as the size of this 26 class in the last month or so. Can you just speak to what really is motivating that now, with, 25 commits and a handful of guys still out there? Like, how high do you see this going, and what is the driving force behind that?
Well, we're trying to make sure that we're in a good place, obviously, with our roster as we head into December. And then you have the portal, and with that, there's a lot of challenges, as you know. You have retention, and then you have guys who are at other schools, and we want to make sure that we're continually recruiting high school players that we can develop. And there's a little bit based on how far we go this season and what happens, that will adjust sort of how we ended up getting to our number at the end of the year. But we want to make sure that we're flush at all areas, and that's at the high end, in terms of like the starters and the older guys, and then certainly with the young guys as we're developing them. So we want to make sure that the way that we're building the roster is the right way, and a lot of it has to do with the high school guys coming in. So we're trying to project it the best we can, but obviously it's floating around and it's a moving target.
Related to the one portal window, maybe like kind of requiring you to add more in high school ranks?
Yeah, I think that's the case, because you can't be short. And I've said it before. I mean, whoever plays past when the portal closes, late into the season, is going to really be at a disadvantage, because there's no way to replace those guys once the 5-day window opens after the final game. So, we all have to make sure that we're not short. That's our job. So we're going to make sure that we're in good shape here and we're flush.
Right. First of all, any update on Josh? But then also, a lot of different guys got a chance to play at that guard spot between Gabe and Ethan, maybe who we haven't seen. And I know when you guys first got him, there was an idea of what he was projected to be, and that hasn't necessarily worked out here. Just an update on where his development is, and maybe is he an option along with Josh to be a guy at that right guard spot?
Yeah, he's an option. He played in the game, and I thought he had some good movement in the run game and did some good things. So we'll see how this week goes, but we're going to keep pushing the envelope on it and keep grinding on it. But he did have some good snaps in that game, and hopefully we can get him to play at a certain level that we need him to play in order to, finish the season the way we want to. Josh, we're expecting a full week from Josh. We'll see how today goes. But he and Phil both, we'll kind of see as the week goes on, but we're expecting a full week of work out of those guys.
Right. I think there was a notion that in June with recruiting, maybe things didn't pop quite the way people were hoping they would in terms of commitments. Now that is happening. Is there anything you feel like you guys have a better grasp on now than you did then that's allowing that to happen? Or is there anything strategic about not taking guys in the summer and kind of taking them now?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a philosophy. Not that we're not trying to get good players, but I think a couple things come into play. One, there's going to be changes in college football year in and year out. That's the first thing, based on how guys play, based on coaching staffs, based on a lot of things. The second part of it is the evaluation of their senior year. So when you take those two things into consideration, the projection was that last spring we were going to be a lot different place in November and December than we were in June. And I think the biggest part is we had more information about the players, because with the amount of resources that we're investing in these young men nowadays, you better be right. That's the most important thing. In the past, you could bring in whoever you wanted. Maybe they were ranked high or whatever. If they didn't work out, they didn't play, or maybe it took 3 or 4 years for them to get on the field, or maybe they tried another school. You can't have bad investments anymore. I mean, it's really important. This is critical decisions, and so we want to make sure that we're, you know, turning over every stone and making sure we're right in our decisions. Not that it's 100%, but we got to do our part and do our due diligence to make sure that when we evaluate these guys, we have all the information that we possibly can to do what's right. So by the university.
Ryan, what do you think has allowed Arvell to be as impactful this year in his first year as a starter? I mean, just to go from being a backup to somebody they're talking about as an All-American candidate.
Right. Well, I think the first thing is that Arvell, you see this in guys when they get into the, you know, year 3, sometimes year 4, but where, you know, the program, you know, kind of kicks in. What I mean by that is like all the work that they've done up to that point, it all starts to come together. And I think you see that with a lot of our guys, but in particular with Arvell, he was a very productive player in high school. Coach Ginn did a great job of bringing him along and you know, providing a mindset of what it means to be a Buckeye. And that's critical, what it means to play at Ohio State. And Arvell has that mindset. He had the minute he walked in the door. And I think Arvell never gets distracted with like noise. He just focuses on what matters. And that's a unique trait. We were talking about this the other day. You know, maybe there's talk about him with awards, or maybe there's talk about him in the draft. That doesn't affect Arvell. Arvell just focuses on what matters. And again, it starts with a mindset. But I think early in his career, you know, he could have very easily, you know, been discouraged because maybe he didn't play as much early on. We moved to D-line for a couple months, and all those things helped him. And then he sat and watched Cody, he watched Sonny, and now his athletic ability, his mindset, and now, you know, the understanding of what goes on in that room and what James has done in terms of, you know, just the football IQ in that room is allowing him to play at a high level. And I think all that combines to what you're seeing on the field.
His skill set to be on the end as an edge rusher, to be as an off-ball linebacker, have you had players like that much before here? Just how does his skill set, the variety of it compare?
Right. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's been somebody I've been around that has that type of a skill set, as talented as Arvell. Probably not. I mean, when Sonny's right there too. Both of those guys have that ability and that versatility, and yeah, I'd have to go back and think, but you know, they're right there at the top.
Coach, you often talk about the outside noise and dealing with it. Obviously, you know, the kids see the posts, they see the stuff. I mean, you've got numerous players being mentioned for huge honors. What do you say to them? Because it is exciting to have their names mentioned. And do you feel like the university should promote the guys at all for those awards?
Well, I think the number one goal is to win and for team goals of winning championships. And if the guys understand that, then I think it's great to promote that. I think if we started to feel like we have a bunch of guys that are self-promoters or that are playing the game to try to get statistics and get awards, then I don't think that we should focus on that. And we're not focused on that. But I think our guys understand that if you win as a team, then everybody's going to do well. And I think that's the case. I think you can see that with Jeremiah. You can see that with Julian. They both are pulling for each other. I think the way that our guys, you know, lift up their teammates, that all matters. So if I started to feel like it was becoming an individual thing, then yeah, we'd probably put a stop to it. But I think this is a team who understands, you know, how important it is to win as a team and not individually. And that's a message that we've been talking about for a long time, about being unselfish. And the best team in the country is going to win, and once selfishness starts to kick in, that's players and coaches included, that's when we get distracted. And, you know, obviously it's my job to keep a close eye on that.
Big hits by the secondary. Caleb had another one early on Saturday. How important is that physical brand of football from those guys?
Yeah, setting the tone, especially early in the game. I mean, it's the one difference about football than any other sport. And you got to set the tone early in the game and let them know you're there. And that's a part of our brand. That's a part of our identity, is playing physical. And you know, whether it's guys running and hitting, winning at the line of scrimmage, finishing guys downfield, you know, that's what we want. We come in here on Sundays and watch the clips. I mean, those are the first ones that we show. Those are our culture clips. Starts in preseason, and it's got to go all the way throughout the season. Because if that's our identity, it's got to be that way every week. And so that's it. And this time of year, we got to be seeking contact. You know, we got to be hunting it up.
When we
talk about pace of play and the pace you guys go at. It's just still extremely efficient on offense. Sometimes when you have a young quarterback or young backs, maybe that efficiency doesn't line up. What's been the key for those guys to still be able to play as efficient at that slow pace?
Yeah, it's. I think we had over 70 plays this past week, so that was great to get. And the defense, I think, had 37 going into the last drive. So there's a lot of good there. But I think, it's kind of the way we operate. We operate out of the huddle. And I think when you look at it from the beginning of the season, you look at it from a 20,000-foot view, and you say, well, we can cut down on the number of plays to keep our team healthy and fresh towards the end of the season. That's important. But once you kind of get in their rhythm of huddling, you get used to that, and the guys get comfortable with that, as opposed to the other part of it. But we also need to be able to do that when we need to do it. And when I say need to, it's based on what's going on with the game. We're not all of a sudden just going to go tempo because we just want to go tempo. It has to give us an advantage. And when we're on the same page and we're being efficient in what we're doing and we're executing at a high level, that's what's most important, period. And so, we're still chasing that. We're not there. But changing the tempo does help. Or if you find yourself in a situation like we did in a 2-minute drill, we have to play on the ball. That's good. It keeps defenses, on their heels a little bit as a change-up. So, we'll keep looking at it. But we're not just going to do it to do it. I think, quite honestly, for the most part, the defenses and defensive coordinators really have caught up to just playing tempo all the time. They can see your formation and call your defense based on how you line up. And so that's where the coach-to-player communication sort of changed things. And all those things have combined to where we're at right now, and that's why we focus so much on efficiency. But we also want to be really explosive as well. So get back to work today and get after it.
I don't pretend to be a coach. I don't know what the scheme is on certain plays, but when I watched the game again, it looked like there were times that the offensive line just didn't block somebody. Somebody came off the edge. I don't know the scheme. Sure. And there were times that they just didn't get pushed. What's your kind of analysis or evaluation of the offensive line at this point? Yeah,
good question. I think there's 2 plays in particular where we had a free runner, and Bo, man, what 2 great runs he had on third down, man. The first one was what we call free safety mix, so the will blitz and the free safety came into the B gap. We had David in there tight. He usually handles any fourth defender over here. They did a nice job. They hit it inside, so David couldn't quite get to him. So that's a scheme issue. We actually blocked it pretty well because once Bo kind of broke the tackle, he ended up making some yards there. And there was a couple others like that, and give them credit. They did a nice job with a couple of those things. I thought, we did overall handle some of that. Was a lot of movement up there. We early on, we ran a stretch play that Austin didn't quite get to the second level. The next time we ran the same one, he got to the second level on the same blitz, got to the backer, and it turned into an explosive run. So one of the things about the run game is, it does take time to take effect. We certainly wish that the first play, would have been part of our day, but it wasn't. So we had to regroup and come back after it. But we're just going to keep swinging on it, and it comes down to fundamentals. That's it. So we'll keep trying to figure out ways to be creative and create space and create explosion. But when it all comes down to the end, it's going to come down to fundamentals. And so, but yeah, I think there's positives, but there's also things we got to get better at.
Last year, all the changes on you've been pretty stable. Obviously, Phillip missed last week. Had you hoped that the line would be more consistent than it's been to this point?
No, I wouldn't say that. I always want them to be more consistent, yeah. But I can't sit here and say I'm disappointed right now. I'm encouraged with a lot of things that are going on up there. And if I thought it was, a real problem or a mess, I would address it. I know that we're going to get a lot more challenges here, and we're challenging these guys every day. And the backs need to continue to run better, and we need to continue to figure out ways to put them in a situation to be successful. And the angles of the blocks, we got to keep working on that. But no, I think they're grinding on it. They're working hard. 2 of the guys graded out a champion. The other guys didn't. We upped our ante on being a champion. It used to be over 80. this past week. Now we're at 83% because we feel like we need to increase our efficiency and execution. But I think there's a lot of good there. But certainly we know what we need to get in terms of winning a championship. So we want all those guys to grade out over 83%.
Right, you guys at times tried some different things. It looked like, I know you got asked about that a little bit after the game, but defensively, like I think the first third downs, you didn't have defensive tackles on there. You bring Justin in, you hand off to Nate. Is that something where at this point of the season you have it, you might as well use it, put it on film? What's the thinking on just adding some new things here in November?
Well, I think part of it is you try to put guys in a situation to be successful. I think when you looked at the group we had on the field, that was a pretty twitchy group we had. And you figure out where it goes. Sometimes it's a little bit of a laboratory to figure out, once they're in that moment, what does it look like? You try to project. Some things are great. I thought our package with Lincoln was well thought out, and what went on with that. Sometimes you do it and it doesn't work out the way you thought it would work out. But I think at this time of year, it's more about putting the people in the right positions to be successful. And then, like you said, having curveballs and changeups are good. And then sometimes, they're good for one or two shots. Sometimes, you come back and you build off of that package, and then it kind of goes from there. So I think you can tell on both sides of the ball, we just look a little different than maybe we did last year. From formations to alignments to fronts to coverages.
Right, the running game takes a while over the course of a game, also over the course of the season. Looks like you've got 4 running backs right now that are running with energy and will. Are you seeing that same thing? And if that continues, do you need to pare it down?
Well, I think they all. CJ's the most veteran there. The other guys like Bo didn't actually didn't play a whole bunch of running back actually in high school, and then he got hurt late in the season. So he hasn't played a ton of football. Isaiah West was injured his senior year. James didn't really get a lot of carries last year, so the same thing with him his senior year. And so these guys haven't played a lot of football. So the more carries we can get them, the more we can get them into the game, the better. The good news is, to your point, that we have 4 of them, where there's been seasons where we've had 2 and then one of them gets hurt, and it's a scramble. So I think we've done a good job of that. And the more they play, the more they're getting comfortable. And I thought that group took a step, even though maybe it only looked like a little step to everybody. There was a lot of things that I saw they took a step on. I thought the 2 runs by Bo and the short yardage situations were excellent. I mean, that was a free guy in the hole. But that's how Quinshawn looked last year, some of the explosive runs that we got with Trey last year. It was good to see Bo hit one. We had to get called back, but that's what we're looking for. And then obviously in pass protection, I thought CJ did a nice job picking up a couple of blitzes. So, but that's it, man. When you have a young room like that, you got to keep getting them out there, getting experience, and then got to keep growing and not make the same mistake over and over again. So, and then trying to identify are there schemes that they do better in than others. And that's the day-to-day grind we're on.
Ryan, I know you don't like to single guys out and leave somebody out of the conversation, but with all the rotation and different reps that young guys got last week, is there anyone that comes to mind immediately for you that exceeded what you thought they might provide on Saturday, and how that might be different down the stretch for them now?
Yeah, not so much. I think some of the guys maybe that hadn't played as much, maybe like some of the non-starters. Like I thought Peyton Pierce was excellent in the game. He's playing well in special teams. This is a guy who was a high school wrestler and just really has taken the next step, I think, and is a productive player for us. As you guys can see, diagnosis plays well, really serious about his business, tough guy, really smart. I thought Bryson Rogers played well, and we need some guys to step up at receiver, and so really good to see him. He made some nice blocks, he made a couple nice catches, so hopefully that can build him some momentum and him some confidence. Moving forward. In terms of other young guys, it was good to see Ian Moore in his first start play well. I mean, when you don't notice somebody, that's a good sign of tackle. And we didn't really notice Ian too much. And a lot of good. I think, full disclosure, he's so used to practicing. I think that there were times where at the last 10 to 20% of the play, he's kind of programmed to sort of shut it down, where you got to play the whole play. But overall, it's a heck of a start. And so hopefully, again, that's another guy that now can build some confidence. I guess probably those are the guys that stuck out. Yeah, that's probably it.
Ryan, at defensive tackle, first of all, is Taiwan on track to get back into action after this week? And then Edric got the start. What did you think of Edric, his first start in a while? And then also, it looked like Jason Moore at the end of the game had some good reps.
Yeah.
Do you see that as like an option to start to maybe get some reps here?
I would love to, yeah. And it was good to see him flash. Now he needs to be more consistent. You're talking about Jason Moore, somebody who, again, is another guy that we'd love to see take the next step. He can do it. You've seen him do it physically. Now can he consistently do it? Which is what I think Edric has now, kind of learned to do. Maybe not as much drama, just going out there and playing and playing the next snap. And that's the sign of his maturity, This is a guy who just lights up a room when he walks in a room. Edric is a great young man. He's got a lot of talent, and he's learning how this all works. And, once he made the transition inside, what that comes with. And, he's had ups and downs a little bit this year, but you're starting to see him play his best football. And I think the maturity and the preparation of what he's doing is paying off. And I think, he's going to be a big player for us. And then in Taiwan, yeah, we felt like it was just, could he have played? Yes, but we decided to hold him. Yeah, so we're expecting a full week of work out of him too.
You talk about how you and Julian, when he comes off the field, you have good conversations about what he sees. I'm curious how you've seen that grow over, what's now been 9 games of his career, and then off the field. Once you get back and watch the film, how has he been able to diagnose areas that he could step up?
I think once you start playing games with somebody and you spend more time with them and you see him on the field, you give him the benefit of the doubt in terms of what he's thinking, and he's not quite there yet, but I understand now that he is putting the preparation in. I kind of understand how his mind works, and there's certain times where you gotta bark at him to make sure that he's locked in. You know what I mean, as a young player, but I see a guy who is locked in a lot. So we're kind of over that stage, and now it's more about the football and what he's seeing, and the decisions he's making, and the preparation, and making sure that he's focused and locked in and concentrating on each situation and what comes with it. And as the scheme continues to increase week in and week out, how important every single play is. And then just what it takes to execute each play and making great decisions. And then having the toughness to lead the team as we get into these bigger games as the season comes to an end. So that's kind of where we are, and he's doing great in terms of his preparation, his mindset.
It might seem a little silly, but do you want him to have the confidence to sometimes make the throws? I know it was an interception against Purdue, but where he feels he can fit things into tight windows, or do you want him to take a step back at times as a young quarterback?
I think that's the art of playing quarterback, and if you could tell somebody that, it'd be a lot easier. It's just there's so many moving parts, and after playing the position, I understand, and just that, if you're talking about that one play in particular, in that situation, we had a 17-play drive, and they're dropping 8. There's really no room in there. You probably got to check the ball down or run, and maybe we play 4th down, or maybe we kick the field goal. But there's just so many bodies in the end zone when it's a 3-man rush that gets really hard. And if you're going to make that throw, it's got to be really tall, top shelf, where only he can catch it. But those are the things that it's so hard to replicate, and you got to learn. But he knew it. The minute he do it, he knew it. He came right over, and that wasn't a situation where you start barking at somebody. You just because he knows nobody want to take care of the ball better than him in that moment. So, but then if you overdo it, then all of a sudden guys get paralyzed. They don't let it rip. So you got to let it rip, man. And every once in a while, bad things are going to happen. You got to come back from it. And I think, to his credit, he's kind of always stayed even keeled in that area. So again, bigger challenges ahead, but that's kind of where he's at.
Ryan, going back to the right guard spots, as you're looking for consistency there, how close is Josh, I guess, assuming his health, how close is he to earning a start in that spot or getting consecutive drives to see what that looks like for him?
Yeah, I think right now, where we stand right now, it's we're going to kind of split the duty up there. But who knows? That might change later today. Josh has got to get healthy. We'll see how Ethan does today. But that's kind of where we kind of feel like we are right now. And we feel like splitting the reps can help them, all those guys, become more efficient. But we're going to keep evaluating, keep pushing on it, and see where we go. And a big part of it is how healthy Josh is.
Clarification. You were talking about the offensive line player earlier. You mentioned David. Who are you talking about there? You said David.
No, David Adolph. He was at the receiver position for that play. Yeah.
Brian, when it comes to recruiting, what kind of value do you find in terms of positionless players, maybe guys that can do a bunch of different things on a field, on an offense or defense?
That's another thing. I think that is like, not to give away trade secrets, but I think nowadays, if you're just a one position only guy, you better be elite, you know. And so if you're an offensive lineman that can play, you know, guard and tackle, or you know you're a receiver, you know, that can block and run, you know, or you know if you're a you know, a linebacker that can play on the edge, or you're a nickel that can play corner, or safety that can play down, like all those things come into play, because you know the versatility is important, because we know this roster's every year is getting shorter and shorter. We're going to get to, you know, just over 100 people on the team, and so that means everybody has to have versatility. That means guys who are on the field and also scout team guys. So anybody that, you know, we're bringing into the program, we want to have some versatility. I think you can see by maybe some of the guys that, you know, we're adding to the roster here, even over the last month, you know, they can do multiple things, and I think that's important. You know, guys like Xavier Johnson, like think about how many roles he played. A guy like Mitch Rossi, you know, these guys, they became very important in those seasons because they could do multiple things, and so the more guys like that we can have in the program, I think the better off we're going to be.
Ryan, when you're talking about maybe working in more guys on defense, different guys on defense, if you look last year behind your 11 starters on defense, the next 6 guys in number of snaps were Jermaine Matthews, Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, Arvell Reese, Caden McDonald, and Lorenzo Stiles, who are all starting this year. If you're playing other guys, is it mostly about keeping guys fresh for this year, or are you thinking ahead to next year for development, retention, that we also want to build the next group of starters?
I think a couple of things. I think the first thing you're thinking about is development for this year, developing depth. What is it going to look like when you're putting you in a game, in a Big Ten game? You know, what does it look like in those moments? It's one thing what we see in practice, but it's another thing to actually do it in the game. So that's the first thing we're trying to evaluate. Then the second thing is, like, to your point, like, where are we going? You know, what's this looking like in the next 2 to 3 years? In each game, we'll go through and we'll take a look at the guys and see how they do, and try to figure in all these decisions on, you know, guys coming into the program, retention, all of that, and then try to project out the best we can based on what we see. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of conversation. He just needs more reps. You know, his awareness is excellent. You know, we can see a projection over here. Look at this. You know, maybe, you know, in a different type of scheme or a different type of, you know, play, he could do these types of, like, we're all trying to figure those things out. Where we feel like with the older guys, we have a pretty good feel for that, which is why we've adapted on both sides of the ball.
All right, Coach, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.